Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info, and welcome to Behind the Wall, the post-race show that comes on after the race, or in this case, a day later. I do apologize for not coming in on Sunday night after the action at Naval Base Coronado, but it was a very busy 3 days and a lot of action during that time. And honestly, I just kind of fell asleep when we got back to the hotel after dinner that night. I'm now calling you from Bishop, California on the way home. As it happens, there are so many sporting events and climbing groups and everything else in this town that every hotel was pretty much sold out when we got through here about an hour ago, and we are now reporting from a motel out here. So very appreciative that they took us in here and found us a room, and they have very good Wi-Fi, so very much appreciated there as well. I know it's going to be a bit of a skeleton crew tonight. I would have loved to do this show when everybody was fresh off the response from yesterday's race. It was a thrilling experience. It was an honor to be there, and it was a tremendous pleasure to be there. So before I go any further into this show here today, I first want to thank NASCAR. I want to thank the United States Navy, and I want to thank everybody else that was involved in making this event happen, as well as approving my credentials for that weekend and for all their hospitality and generosity that weekend. I really wanted to live up to the opportunity that was presented in this case here. I know that it was a race that had its share of logistical challenges. We'll talk a bit about that tonight as well. We'll talk about the races themselves. But I would say, starting off here, that the benefits far outweigh any of the detriments from this. This was a tremendous event with a massive crowd out there. And then to top it all off, 3 thrilling races, and wouldn't you know it, a first-time winner in car number 67, and of course that being Corey Heim. So again, I apologize if you're watching this show after the fact here. I'm recording this at 10:15 Pacific time on Monday night here, but if you're listening to this on the way to work or something else there, I hope that you will enjoy this as well as you would have on Sunday night. I will also apologize if you hear a little squawking sound on my microphone, if you hear a little sounds like that. I tried a different setup here in the room, and my mic stand wasn't really fitting this lineup, so I'm just holding it here. So if you hear little weird sounds here and there on there, especially like that, hopefully that's not too distracting for you there. So, wow, we actually got a few people in the chat. I didn't expect really hardly anybody here. I apologize in advance if any of you are going to be a little bit more tired there tomorrow there or anything. But hey, I could not wait to be able to share my stories here from this weekend and everything from that there. So yeah. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. So again, first off, like I said, very thankful to be a part of this opportunity. I had no idea whether my credentials were going to go through or not. I knew that this was a massive opportunity, for NASCAR to be on a live naval base and put together a triple header weekend, no less, on an unproven course. Not knowing what's going on and everything. It was a really, really unique experience. And I think probably the first story to kind of lead off with this was going to the track on Friday morning, and going onto naval, onto the island of Coronado, which I was not really familiar with. I haven't been to San Diego in probably about 20 years. But going onto the island, and we were waiting in line for credentials. And again, just seeing the amount of people that were there for that was already a first indicator of just how many people were showing up for that. Then the national anthem played over the speakers from the base. And, everybody was having conversations and stuff before, but once that played, everybody stopped talking, and the military members that were in line offered a hand salute. And then everybody just waited till it was over and then went right back to what they were doing. And it really reminded you that, this is again, an active base. This is not just an empty spot somewhere or anything, or something that's not used anymore. And I think it really set the tone for the weekend. So it was really a cool moment here as well. We got there very early. I saw, of course, the videos that NASCAR was promoting, talking about making sure the people get to the track very early, have their photo ID, understandable security measures and everything, and getting through there. I know on the media side, it was very different from what the public's view was in terms of, how quickly they would get through security. I understood a couple of friends I spoke to experienced some very long lines, including over at the Carrier Corner on throughout the weekend, especially on Saturday. But I could say, at least on the media side of it, there they handled that part very well. Media parking usually is a bit easier accessible. We were kind of close to where the front straightaway was in the fan zone there, and we were kind of parked next to the warehouses out there, and it was a little bit of a walk. But as I think another thing that became very apparent very quickly is of course there the base is just, it's a big wide open flat area, the airfield and everything. And that sounds obvious, but if you really think about it, I myself don't have military experience. I've had friends and relatives who have, but and I remember going to a military base that was used as an antique fair back in the Bay Area, and just understanding just how large this area is. And sometimes when you go to a place, you anticipate there's going to be dirt surfaces or hills or inclines, but just the vastness of this base, just how much of it there, it was impossible to really take in everything that there was that whole weekend. I think that was probably the biggest challenge from that. And that's why you saw a lot of people out there with scooters and bikes and whatnot. That's not really my style. I think if you ever saw me on one of those, it'd be like watching one of those giant bears on a unicycle there just stumbling around. So I didn't have anything set up on that. But it was definitely a unique setting. There was a wonderful breeze that was through there the whole time. And then, of course, you have the service members themselves, which I think the other thing that was very eye opening was I was kind of wondering if there was going to be kind of a cliquish thing, like maybe the military members would be kind of just like in their own zone or something and just there. And then you'd have like, other people, civilians in another section or something, or not that there should have been or anything. That certainly wasn't my feeling, but I was just feeling like, people, kind of like when you have such different backgrounds, or something like that, I would, it could be like that sometimes. But my point in bringing that up is that was not the case at all. There, everybody was mingling with everybody. It was great. I mean, the sailors there, and everybody just really excited about trying to understand what this NASCAR thing is. And then, of course, all of us civilians, they're trying to understand the history of this base and what it had to offer, and all the incredible equipment that was on display, the displays that they had for Anduril and other firms out there. Of course, the big aircraft carrier out there. I did not find my way out to the aircraft carrier this time. However, Last Bro was actually sitting in Carrier Corner for the Truck Series race and really enjoyed the view from there as well. It was really an interesting venue. It's tricky to try to come up with the best way to discuss it, because there was just so much that was happening. And I felt like I was just trying to kind of keep up with it all 3 of these days. Which is what I think was so exciting about it. And at some points they're just, again, still catching up on the O'Reilly and the Cup Series articles. Truck Series articles already on the lastcar.info page. The O'Reilly and the Cup ones there are coming up on here as well. So that'll be another thing that will be coming up here for the site very shortly too. But, gosh, where even to go from here? It was... It was crazy. I don't know. If you guys have questions, I know we only have a few people in the chat here. I'll try to kind of keep an eye on that too, and maybe that'll help guide things from here as well. But I guess we could kind of go like the way we usually do on this show here, after kind of laying the base here about the races themselves and who the race winners were. Corey Heim, what can you say about this kid? I mean, just a tremendous run he had out there. 23-11 continuing their dominance in this season. And what a response that they gave as a whole team, right when Denny Hamlin is rattling off 3 straight wins and gobbling up Tyler Reddick's point lead here. right then, you have this massive push here by all four of their cars, including their open entry. And Corey Heim comes out with the victory, the first for the number 67 in Cup Series history, a number made famous by the late Buddy Arrington, who passed away a few years ago. You remember the video that discussed on this channel and the wonderful pictures that Brian Hallman at the BRH Racing Archives contributed to that project. There was a big part of that. Just a tremendous moment, and I was glad that in the media center I couldn't wait to ask him about the number and that history, and I thankfully had the opportunity for that there, and he thought that was cool, and he brought up that coming into this race weekend he had actually looked at an article about the actual history of other numbers that had not won in the Cup Series, and looking ahead to next season and driving the 35, which is one of those numbers that has not won at all in the Cup Series. Indeed, NASCAR Classics making a post, I believe, earlier today talking about that as well. It was a really cool and unexpected moment in a race that already had so many different phases to it. I think another thing that added to the challenge of this entire weekend, it reminded me very much of Mosport when we did our coverage there in 2019. In a way, Mosport has so many beautiful vistas, so many immaculate corners, and such a interesting atmosphere there that you could probably spend an entire weekend just touring the track, never mind actually watching the races. And this track in Coronado was very much like that. I feel like at the end of this, I feel like I explored very little of the track itself. I think a big part of that was just, again, how much action there was in the garage. And I believe me when I tell you that all three of these races, it was an absolute thrash in there for each of these. I mean, I don't even know. I was about to say especially the Truck Series, but it's probably all three really from that experience this weekend. That was more than enough to fill all three of those days, at least on my end there. And I hope you enjoy the coverage from that there. I would have loved to go around and check out some of the other spots on the course there. But I didn't really check that out. But again, that's the great thing about having my brother out here on these races. He does the fan side of it. He got some great pictures from other parts of the track. He met a lot of great people out there too. And I wanted to definitely share the pictures on there at the same time. So, yeah, but I mean, I guess, let's see. Well, just scratching the surface on Corey Heim's win, though. I mean, it's just completely unexpected. It's so rare for an open team to win these days, no matter what the organization is. I think this is only the fourth one we've had since the charter system was introduced. Just an extraordinary way that this played out. He was right up there all weekend. Didn't run the Truck Series race or the O'Reilly race this weekend, but, seemed to have a good piece. It's really hard to tell because, of course, a lot of these teams are trying to figure things out, but by the time the Cup Series guys got out there, it seemed like they were able to understand, the track well enough to not tear up a lot of equipment. Certainly there were still some unapproved adjustments that some had to deal with there. But Heim working his way up there after Tyler Reddick had dominated a portion of this. Bubba Wallace, what a run that he had as well, coming back from 2 laps down, got both the laps back very in quick succession. He was very fortunate in this respect, but I mean, luck always plays a factor into it too. That the engine failure for Brent Cruz, which ended up being your last place finisher for this race, got his first lap back, and then the big wreck that happened over in turn 1, getting him the second lap back, and then spending the rest of the race getting back up there and getting all the way to the second spot, to the point that he was actually visibly disappointed in that finish. And that was something very much shared by his teammate Riley Herbst, who I caught up to on pit road. I made a point when I saw how good Herbst was doing, especially after the initial wreck and being up there. I saw a tweet that was posted on somebody else's account that said that, oh, Riley Herbst is up in the top 5. Oh, but he's, got damage from the wreck, so he's not really expected to contend or something. But I didn't notice that. He seemed like he was right in the top 5 there. Got rattled there at the end. I think I heard there was some contact with him and AJ Allmendinger that dropped him back a couple spots at the end. So maybe that he was more upset from that. I still haven't posted the interview from that. I'm in the process of working with that and getting that posted up there. But he seemed a bit more infuriated than happy with the run that he had. He actually said that the team, his team has felt as strong, week to week, every week this season, especially compared to what he struggled with last year. That maybe the results haven't necessarily had it. He seemed really surprised that myself and some others were coming up there and congratulating him on having a good run, which admittedly has been pretty rare. I mean, yes, he had the Daytona 500 challenging for the lead with his teammate, and of course that controversial wreck there at the end. But we haven't really seen that much out of him really in these last few weeks there. But it concerned me a little bit. Maybe it's just that it speaks to the nature of the Cup Series itself, that maybe a good run is no longer good enough. Maybe it's still the remnants of the playoff mentality where you think that you have to win and you're in. Certainly, I think that a race like this, where it's Corey Heim and a non-points driver in a part-time effort, winning the race is still, more important than anything. We don't have to even talk about playoff implications or anything like that, or if only he was full-time, he would be in the playoffs. And that's what next season's going to be about. That's a whole thing later. So it was kind of interesting in that respect there too. But another thing that was very apparent, and Heim was kind of a part of this here as well in the earlier stages of the race. You usually, I'm so used to seeing, even at races at Sears Point and other road courses, even Watkins Glen as well, a lot of times a leader, especially if qualifying actually goes through and you have a guy like a Shane Van Gisbergen up front, they can get a good lead, get a good jump, and they're going to just stay up there, and they're only going to lose the lead during pit stops. In this one here, it was very, very different. The track was so long and with such complicated elements to it there that it just looked like every time they got by, the field was kind of stacking up more and more up front. And then Shane lost the lead, and you got Blaney up there, and then you had Bubba Wallace up there, and you had other drivers that were kind of in the mix. And pretty soon you had about 5 or 6 guys that were nose to tail through turn 16, which was a real tricky corner, by the way. I don't know how well it showed on camera, but that was kind of where I stood for a good portion of the Cup race, as well as I'd say first part of the O'Reilly race there. When they came off that corner, there's a big hump that they hit, and I think it was that same hump that Allgaier hit that caused some damage to the 7 car there as well. But we had a pretty competitive battle there at the front of the field there too. Kind of going back to the logistics there of the race, one thing that was, I think, a challenge for some fans that were there, as well as for myself, is I would say this is probably the first race that I've done the last place coverage in where having the media access didn't really give you better viewpoints of the racing itself. I'd say even more than Talladega. At Talladega, you see just a small portion of it from pit road, but you can get a good sense of where everybody's running, who's gaining, who's dropping back and stuff, and then you can go to other parts of the track and see what's going on. And Mosport kind of the same way. They had a media center that was right next to that last corner where you usually had big wrecks and stuff in the previous few races. But in this race here, if you were standing next to the wall in certain spots there, you would only really see kind of a glimpse of what was happening. And even in turn 16, where you had the pit wall and then you had the racetrack, that was where the right just past the entrance to the pit road was where the entrance to the Cup Series garage was. And so the Cup Series garage was where I was for a good portion of the first part of Sunday's race. And I decided to it only had one exit. It didn't have a second exit. Sometimes there's rear exits or cars get towed through an alternate path or anything. Wasn't an issue with this one here. So I knew there was this one exit, but there was tons of foot traffic coming by. And then you had a lot of people that were in like folding chairs, and they were sitting at eye level with the wall, but I don't know how much they could see. It seems like even from where I was standing, I could just see the roofs of the cars going by in that corner, and I could kind of make out who was what. But you really had to be in the stands, in any of the stands really, to have a decent view of what was actually going on, at least at the front part of the track. I can't speak to the, the back half of it or carrier corner or anything like that. Those seem to be different setups, but at least around the fan zone, which was itself massive too, the way that this was all set up. That was definitely a tricky part of it there. And the reason I bring this up is that the Cup garage itself was massive. It was, you had, kind of to give you an idea of like the way it was set up, because the pictures from the maps that were sent out made it seem like things were a little bit closer together than they were. Everything was spread out really, really far. And they really, I think, I'm glad that they did that, because there was such a big crowd that came out there. You really needed that for crowd control. But what you had was you had a setup there where you would go through security, and you would go through, all I think it was like two different rows of checkpoints. And then you had like a beer garden in the middle. You had the souvenir haulers to the left. You had kind of vendors more to the right. The ones like Anduril and Coke and Logitech and some of those other ones were over there. And you kind of pass those, and never kind of spread out that much. Usually you're just kind of in one or the other, or you kind of go from one zone to the next. All these were like spread out that much. And everything was like way out, and then it kind of expanded even more, because again, when you again, this is going to sound glaringly obvious to people that have more experience with military bases than myself. The everything is just spread out so far. You go over there, and you got warehouses here, you got hangars out there, you got other buildings out there, and then the media center was way off to the right. So that it was actually right next to where the Truck Series and the O'Reilly garages were. But it was kind of a hike to get back there, because it was behind the big store that you saw the big lines from. So it was like way over to that section. And even when you get over there, you're still not even quite at turn one. So if you're really kind of picturing like how long the front straightaway was, like that's kind of the far extent of that. Like if I went straight around the O'Reilly garage, I still don't think I would see turn one. I see you guys mentioning already about the cars catching air coming off that hill and all that. That was like a whole other section. So I know on paper, when you hear that it's like, what size this track was, how many miles it was, when you actually visualize it, it's like that much further out. So you had all this over there. And again, you had enough space there to line up all the O'Reilly trailers on the left and all the Truck Series trailers on the right. And there was an entrance to the pit road that was at the exit of pit road. So that was the length of pit road itself. So you kind of had that. And then going back the other direction, you had the Arby's bridge that was over turn 16. And then further back, after the souvenir haulers, was the Cup Series garage. And the Cup Series garage itself, with just the 36 or 39 haulers there, the three open teams and the regular teams there, it was just all of them side to side, and way, way the back of this area, because the front half of that area there was the DVP zone. Usually you see the DVP area is going to be in, like a different garage building, or maybe they have a different section of garages. Of course, all this was open. So, of course, the Cup Series garage, the Cup Series haulers were just lined up side to side in that section, and the entire width of that Cup garage was wider than the grandstand in turn 16. So what I do whenever I go to these races is I really try to scope out, okay, what's the easiest way to go from like the media center to the garage? Or is this going to be a race where I'm just going to have to be in the garage or on pit road where, for the whole race? Try to get Wi-Fi access, try to get, see the leaderboard on my phone, try to see a screen that can show the timing and scoring, or, the screens on the back of the pit boxes, for example. No two races are the same. Next week at Sears Point's going to be very different. We're looking at doing Las Vegas in the fall. That'll be very different as well. But this one here, it was a real challenge. And for the first about 25 laps of this race, where we did have some issues there, you had Austin Dillon spun out. You had Ricky Stenhouse breakdown. You had the wheel that came off Bubba Wallace's car. You had just a couple of different, these early incidents there. You had Jimmy Johnson was struggling. Oh God, he was struggling so badly. He just, he probably made like 10 pit stops in the first stage of this race. And it just cost him so much time out there. But, it was kudos to his sponsor for arranging to get the diecast out there as quick as they did. Actually, at his souvenir hauler, they had both his truck version and his Cup car ready for that. I don't agree with what they did with the 24 scale thing, and they said that only Jimmy was going to only sign those at autograph sessions. I think that was really silly. I think especially if you're going to have the 64 scale one, at least have something where you don't have to buy some $130 thing or more than that to get, Jimmy Johnson's autograph. I think that's a little bit too, it sends the wrong message there, and I appreciate Noah Gragson for coming out and saying, hey, I'll sign anything. So, kudos to him for that. But I will say it again, at the same time, I like that they had the 64 scale of both the truck and the cup car on hand there for the fans, because it seemed like that was doing great sales there at the meantime. But but again, I staged myself in the Cup Series garage, and I was still trying to find a good spot. And much like the people that were sitting in chairs, trying to find a place where you could at least see, cars exiting the chicane and heading into turn 16, and trying to find a leaderboard from there. So, and I'll tell you what, of all the races I've covered so far, and again, very reminiscent of Most Sport in this respect too, definitely a track you're going to get your steps in for sure. I think it was over 20,000. I walked like 11 miles on the first day. I think it was like 5 on the second and 7 on the third. And again, that was just from just that front quarter of the track, I would say, is probably that. So, I heard a lot about a lot of fans that were hiking a long way to other spots. I can sympathize. I know that even in the immediate fan zone, it was a large spot there. So, by bringing this up, though, again, it kind of ties into the racing action itself in the course of the last place battle. So, I was going through there, and I was kind of like, when I saw that the Cup garage was wider than the space from where the actual turn 16 setup was, than the actual grandstands, I was like, okay, so I should probably be just in the Cup Series garage, because it only has one entrance. But I can't stay at that one entrance because I can't really see the cars, and I can't really see the leaderboard, and the Wi-Fi and the NASCAR app's not loading the leaderboard. So that made it kind of challenging there, but I was able to kind of piece together who was running where. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way to the end of it. The last couple haulers were Rick Ware's and Haas Factory teams. And I'm just going over there and just hiking over there. And it just feels like it's just forever. I'm just going and going and going. And I get all the way down to the end. And right when I'm getting towards the end, I see it, that Haas Factory team left one of their director's chairs behind their hauler. Usually they bring all those out for the fans to sit behind the pit boxes, and they had pretty much all of them down there. So I didn't think they were going to leave any of those behind. I was like, okay, this will be great. I can, nobody's in here. It was literally empty. Like absolutely nobody was in there. Besides, there was a ATV that had some of the firefighters in it, and there were security guys at the main gate. They were making sure people were walking back and forth and not blocking the entrance to the garage in case somebody would randomly pull behind the wall there. And that was pretty hairy because, I mean, there was very little space between the track surface at the pit entrance and where people were walking. So that was something that had to get worked out very well. You're cool, man. Getting set up from there was definitely a challenge. If this is too bright, you can turn off that light there if you like, man. So yeah, I know. But these are the only plugs that they had on the wall here, so I kind of just set it up that way. I'm waiting for the air conditioning to still tick up here. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, no worries. Oh yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, here, I got you. I can get you off camera. Yeah, and those aren't doing anything. You can just move those out of the way. Wow. Okay. Yep. So, so just mentioning the Cup Series garage and getting set up from there, we went back over there at the same time, and so I found the chair. I found the chair for the Haas Factory team. And again, as I say, Haas Factory team, one of the most underrated teams out there. Really appreciate. I'm glad whoever it was that left one of the chairs there. That was good, because I was just walking around so much. I was like, I need to sit down somewhere. And the beer garden had a lot of seats, but those were just filled up there. And you're just walking. You're just walking constantly. And I'll tell you this, like, yeah, it made me. I'm going to try to get my steps in a lot more going forward. It was a great positive motivator on that. So I think that I think that will make things easier. So yeah, I sat down in there, and literally I was in that chair for like 30 seconds. I had it positioned in such a way that I could kind of see the big screen in turn 16, coming out of the chicane. And I was in there and I'm like, okay, cool. So now if something happens, I'm in the garage area. I'll be able to see him coming to the right, even though it's going to be, it must have been quarter of a mile, at least maybe a half mile away. It certainly looked that way from how wide it was. I'm sure it wasn't, but it just seemed that way. But I sat in there and I was all set. It's like, okay, this might be a race where maybe it's going to take a long time. They were talking about being, of course, worried after the O'Reilly race and the truck race about how long the race is going to be. And then right when I sat there, Brent Cruz blew the engine, and the caution came out. So I got up out of the chair and went down to Joe Gibbs's hauler, which was all the way back on the other side. So now I'm heading back down that way. That worked out. I got over there. Brent was still behind the wheel when the car got towed in. So he gets out of the car. I'm able to kind of follow up with him, and caught him up there. And that was great. I was able to get there first and get a couple questions out right before Bob Pockris and Jonathan Field and a couple of others came down there, and interviewed him. And, kudos to Brent for stepping up there and being able to, run, some laps in his first cup race there. It was just something just happened just catastrophically there. And it was bound to happen at some point. This is a very demanding track. I think whatever happened there could have easily happened to anybody else. There was speculation about a missed shift. I didn't hear that from his. It was just something just went and basically took him out of the race there. Talking to Brent and, in that moment, we were doing that interview, getting a couple other questions off there, but like I say, Bob was there and some others. And then right when we're wrapping up the interview, and Christopher Bell had walked back in, he came, he was wearing his red Craftsman uniform and he was walking back over to, the hauler. And then right when that happened, you heard vaguely the caution had come out, but you didn't know exactly what it was. It was, it was so hard to tell even from that spot, and you couldn't see the screen anymore from where we were. So I had no idea what was going on one way or the other. All of a sudden you hear the whistles blowing from the security guards, and the 97 car drives into the garage area with the nose entirely destroyed and just drives by, probably about 20 miles an hour. And of course, the garage area is so big, he was nowhere near anybody. He was nowhere near me or anybody, but you drove right by and on the way back over there. And Brent was like, oh my God, what happened there? And he didn't know what happened either. And so, I just go on a dead sprint over there and I'm like, okay, I got my microphone out already. I'm carrying this, just like here. I'm going to try to get the quote. I'm going to try to just get it right here, cause I honestly don't know what happened. And obviously he's not going to be happy because he won the pole. He was up front. He looked like he was doing really well. And then all of a sudden, he gets the car tore up and you got this prestigious race. I knew it was going to be a really rough situation there. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try to get down there at the same time. So I got over there and he's climbing out of the car and he's kind of looking at the front of the car. And then he goes back over and he drops his helmet off and he starts walking over to the hauler. And at that point, I'm trying to kind of speed walk over there and try to get ahead of him. And, clearly he's going to, head back over there. And again, garage area is really big. So it takes a long time for him to get back over there. And it's enough time for me to kind of get next to him there. And, I get my microphone out there and I'm bringing it in there. And I was like, Shane, what on earth happened out there? And he said, what was it? It says now's not a good time, brother. That's what he said. And he just went right between the haulers there. And I saw a couple other people there that were right behind me and they were trying to do the same thing too. And I said yeah, no, he doesn't want to talk. And, of course, he came out there and did give an interview over the Infield Care Center. I saw somebody was asking here about where that was. Yeah, the Infield Care Center was way back. As far as I can tell, I know there was a medical center that was near the media center. I never went to the Infield Care Center, but I assume it was in the same building because it was way over on the entire opposite side of the main fan area. It was behind the store and near the media center. So, but it was way far from the Cup garage. So I didn't even try to go over there. At that point there, I got, with the Shane Van Gisbergen one. Then of course they towed the 88 car in and it's got the left front suspension hanging off it. And then about a couple minutes after that, Austin Hill drives into the garage area with damage to the left side of the car. Left rear suspension is wobbly and the crew for Childress's crew is already kind of standing there. and waiting for him to show up, and they start attempting repairs. Ultimately didn't get back in the race. By the time I was walking back to the media center to kind of get started on the article, I heard over the radio that, yeah, they declared Brent Cruz out. Of course, Christopher Bell starting the car, so Bell getting credit for the last place finish, as well as Van Gisbergen, Hill. Just Van Gisbergen and Zilich. They didn't declare Hill out at that time. Hill got declared out sometime afterwards there. Yeah, a rough deal there. Finished next to last for Van Gisbergen. Another rough deal for Zilich. Hate it for him. He looked really, really good up there. Was able to battle up there to the lead. And the best he's looked all season. And both of them really needed those runs. I'm sure other people got Zilich's interview. I didn't see him there in the garage area. I'm sure he was already, brought over to the care center at that point. Just a tough deal there for that. And it was a shame too, because it was a great sponsor promotion they had too, to bring back the blue and the silver versions, the Red Bull cars. I think that was really fun that they did that, and trying to, bring a new generation to that, but it just wasn't meant to be. And, unfortunately, Austin Hill made a mistake, and I think Austin was very upfront about that in his interview. And unfortunately, it's the same mistake he made at Pocono, which was just last week, where he just came off that corner too wide, stuffed them both into the fence, and it was just on. And you had almost exactly the same situation that we had from Saturday's race, and that very brutal accident that had Sam Mayer involved in it, and other drivers. We'll talk more about that in the O'Reilly portion here of the show. But it was a really, really rough deal there at the same time. Rooney Mac, I see your comment here as well about Van Gisbergen being aggressive earlier. I'm not as aware of that. I still need to watch the actual broadcast of the race there and get more context on that. I did hear more about the Gregson and the Kevin Magnussen contact out there, which was pretty eye-opening. I didn't realize there was as much physicality between the two of those drivers there, but it definitely seemed like the kind of race that was setting up for somebody to be really upset no matter what was happening here too. And that was definitely the commonality, certainly at the last place finishers of all three of these races, is very similar to any other race that's particularly prestigious. I mean, none of these drivers are going to be happy finishing last. I'm not going to pretend that that's even in the galaxy of possibilities here, but it was the extent to which people were upset about falling out of this particular race, especially if they were the last place finishers, was very much clear. I saw that with Kyle Sieg in the Saturday race. I did not see that with Corey LaJoie, but I heard over the radio he was just frustrated with the damage that he had sustained on that truck just sitting on pit road, and it pretty much ruined what had been a pretty good start to the weekend. There were some reports about him shouting at his crew or something like that. I can't confirm that. I didn't hear anything like that. I tried to get a hold of him after the truck race and just didn't get a hold of him. Same thing with Jamie McMurray and the issues that he had on his Ram there at the same time. But that kind of had challenges of its own there too. But yeah, so, I mean, really after that wreck happened, I got back over to the media center, was kind of working on that. The media center, by the way, was an interesting setup. Itself was a big warehouse on kind of the far end of the fan zone. There was kind of a back alleyway that went by the TV compounds and behind the infield care center and behind the store. And then alongside the O'Reilly and the Truck Series garages to kind of get back over to it. And I tried to make a lot of use out of it, especially since it was so tricky to kind of get your bearings on what was actually happening at the track. I don't like to stay in the media center too long most of the time because things are usually happening in the garage. But when the Cup race in particular, where it was so far from the Cup garage, it just became more efficient in that sense there. So for the middle stages of the race, I was in there and tracking kind of what was happening with, again, the 2311 drivers kind of all gravitating towards the front. You got other drivers that are having issues. Gregson ended up bouncing off the wall and dropped to the bottom five. You had other competitors that were struggling. Stenhouse ultimately dropping out with a blown radiator fluid on the windshield of the 47 car. He was having a rough day. Saw one of you guys mentioning that there as well. Different situations like that just made it very challenging. And then you had, Carson Hocevar looked like he was going to maybe pull it off. Then he gets spun up by Heim. Perhaps some retribution from the Truck Series Championship before. There was speculation about that. I don't know. But it was, I don't think Heim was necessarily upset that Hocevar had spun out, and then was kind of bounced off of by Ross Chastain there at the same time. And then, yeah, when it got down to about the last 10 laps of the race, got back down over onto pit road. I got over to Tyler Reddick's at first because he was still leading at the time. And then right when Reddick cut down a tire, the group, all the media that was standing there, including the TV, people for Prime, a lot of the other reporters, everybody went down about 4 stalls over to the 67, which was right in front of a big screen that the main grandstand was looking at. And then, watched the last couple laps. And I posted the video of that on Twitter just this afternoon. And saw the celebration there on pit road, and that was a really cool moment. And again, it was just something so supremely vindicating, I think, for Heim. The absurdity, again, that the man does not have a full-time deal in any of the 3 series, won some thrilling truck races at both Darlington and Rockingham this year that were even more thrilling than I think most of his wins last year when he was dominating so much on his way to the championship, short of the 6-wide pass that he made at Phoenix to actually lock it up. He's been very spectacular, and it was great to hear the response. I mean, everybody was so happy for him. And of course, on top of this, you already have the crowd there that's so energized about this event in general. Now you have this first-time winner that won in his 13th start, just like Jimmie Johnson did back in 2002, although Johnson was a full-time driver by that point. Getting this opportunity and pulling off this win was just tremendous, and a great celebration on pit road. Great to see Bootie Barker get another win, of course, winning with Bubba Wallace back at Talladega in 2021. Saw the crew, getting him there off pit road and part of the celebration there as well. Yeah, just a great turnaround. And something I'd forgotten, one of the other reporters from Front Stretch was bringing this up here, that Heim had failed to qualify for the street race at Chicago last year. And I remember, that did happen, because then that's how Carl Long's team got in the show. And that was really surprising at the time. And they really talked about how that had really kind of, stuck in his mind. That it was, I think the race was on his birthday, not to sound like an FS1 broadcast here, but didn't help. It was a situation like that. Ended up with a situation where, they really wanted to get back at it and have a good run. And then, wouldn't you know it, next street race comes out this year with the San Diego deal and goes out there, not only qualifies for the thing, qualifies for it well, and pulls off the win. And, just a wonderful accomplishment there. The pomp and circumstance of the race itself was quite good. I was also on pit road for the opening ceremonies. You had of course all the dignitaries out there, it's just incredible. The flyovers and everything were intense. They had the Ospreys come over the building there on Friday during the lead up to the truck race, and I was in the media center when that happened, and you could actually feel the roof kind of tremble as they were flying over. It was, that was pretty wild there too. But, again, I think it was an interesting race, an interesting way to see it play out. Interesting to see the strategy work out the way it was, and interesting to see these guys really go at it. I mean, we had some great finishes there as well. Zane Smith gets another top 5, continues his great summer run that ever since the 600 in particular, that he's really been standing out. And AJ Allmendinger coming up on his 500th Cup start next week at Sears Point, having that great run without factory support, had pretty much max points for as well as he did. Short of actually winning the race there, could have very well been a factor in that. And we'll see if he's able to carry that next week at Sears Point as well. Of course, we'll be covering that race next week there after the dust settles on this here too. Kind of going into, I guess probably another good way to kind of go into this here was, again, the O'Reilly and the Truck Series races here as well. Both these races together had just an unbelievable amount of mechanical carnage that was going on behind the scenes. And since the media center was so close to that garage area, found myself in that section a much more there for both of those races there. So again, Truck Series race was kind of more. I was still kind of getting adjusted to the track itself and figuring out where everything was and where everybody was going to get brought to. And once I kind of figured that out, made it a bit easier to stage myself out there. But the first part of that day though was just the all the many crashes that we had. I mean, the backup trucks. I mean, originally it looked like there was just going to be a couple of little incidents. Adam Andretti, who himself ended up making I don't know, a bit of controversy himself with that bizarre argument that he had with Parker Kligerman. I wasn't there for that particular argument, but just seemed like I don't know what was going on that side. But I know that Andretti himself, who finished last at Rockingham after an early crash not so long ago, was pretty much the first driver to actually have his equipment torn up in the garage area there. Came into the garage with the right side getting banged out there. They put a piece of block of wood to kind of get the fender rounded back the right way. The team ended up stripping all the decals off the right side and having to kind of get everything patched back together on that. Brendan Queen came in there after that. Didn't seem like he had very significant damage, but Brendan was really hard on himself, saying he made just a mistake out there. And then suddenly after that, the floodgates open, and now all of a sudden you got the 77 is wrecked, and you got for Justin Marks, you got Stuart Friesen has a whole lot of damage, and then you got people that are bringing out backup trucks, and you had I think between 10 and 12 different drivers, like more than the third of the field that was just damaged or completely destroyed in all these other incidents out there. And that was kind of ended up being a big part of just what I was covering on Friday, is just managing the amount of traffic that was coming through there. And then you had even more people that were getting damaged in qualifying. And then you had more issues there too. I mean, the learning curve was so significant there. And of course the Truck Series guys that going out there with steel-bodied vehicles, where you can, get a fender rubbing very easily with the least amount of rubber on the track as the first support series to the race. They had the steepest learning curve to deal with, and they really had to fight their way around there. And, you could really sense that in the garage area too. It actually, I probably of all the three series, I probably spoke to the truck drivers the least, because it was just all hands on deck. They had everybody out there that was trying to fix these things up and get them back out there. We had backup trucks that just had everybody like decaling them and trying to get everything presentable enough there. And it was a very much tattered field that presented itself for the Truck Series race that happened on Friday. But again, the first last place finish for Ram since 2015 was Corey LaJoie's last place run there. And dropped him back in the order. There was shots I did see from the broadcast footage. It seemed like he was kind of sitting on pit road for a very long time before he actually got the truck behind the wall. But ends up with the last place finish. First time the 10 has finished last since Jennifer Jo Cobb got her ninth and most recent last place run in the Truck Series a few years ago. So a bit of a changing of the guard there too. It still feels weird not having the 10 be her number, but of course now part of the Colleague Ram effort with those teams out there as well. But McMurray as well, had some, I believe he had some damage as well in practice, if I remember correctly. But there was just so much chaos out there. It was kind of hard to track there at the same time. But, here, I got you, man. But, yeah, again, having kind of a different situation there for his team and the issues that they had there too. Yeah, trucks are the guinea pigs, Kyle. That's exactly the way to put it. That was a different way for all that to shake out. But yeah, Stuart Friesen, Jake Garcia, and Tyler Ankrum bringing out the bottom five there. The Truck Series side, Jimmy Johnson looked really good. Looked like leading a couple of laps. Looked like he was going to potentially pull something off there. Unfortunately, electrical issues dropped him out of the race there towards the end. Nathan Nicholson was another driver I was really excited to see do well, because Spencer Boyd, I still, he was such a good sport when I gave him a LASCAR certificate a couple of years ago. And, I really have been kind of pulling for his 76 team to really get some good runs. And it was interesting. I actually ended up speaking to Spencer after this race, and he was telling me about his road course experience and how he kind of met up with Nathan there as well, and giving him an opportunity to run the road courses and kind of improve that part of the program there. That will be coming up in a later article. I didn't do a video recording of that. I just had the audio there. So that'll be something coming up to the website here a bit later there. But Nathan did a great job until he just got caught up in somebody's mess, and ended up being the end of their day there, back in the 28th spot there. Another driver that looked really good, of course, you got to talk about the absolute heartbreak for Tyler Reif. Looked like, you had very similar to kind of what we had at the beginning of the Cup race. At the end of the truck race, you had just a bunch of people that just couldn't get out of each other's way and were stacking up. You were setting up to have a really dramatic, like 3 or 4 truck battle there for the finish. And you got Tyler Reif right in the middle of it there. Looks like he's going to pull it off. Al Neese has a history at the Naval Base Coronado there as well. And they're really looking to kind of capitalize on this and have a great run out there. Unfortunately, just makes one little mistake, misses that one tire stack, has to do a stop and go, loses the lead to Lane Riggs, and Lane ends up pulling off the win. But my goodness, what a run he had. And, Reif is going to get that moment. Just mentioning that earlier, he finished in 9th place in his first ever Truck Series start back at Phoenix just last year, just 7 months ago. He was running that well. So his first win is going to come. I know he feels terrible about it. Undoubtedly, that's the case. And again, I think that's the other part of the emotions that we really saw from this weekend is we don't know if they're going to be running this race again. We don't know if it's going to be at another base. Of course, it's an active base, so we don't know what purpose it's going to be serving this time next year, or if it's at the 4th of July or whenever they're going to look at it. I think the consensus seems to be that if this ends up being a one-off weekend, people are happy with that. If it ends up coming back, they'll be just as happy. I believe Bob Pockrass and Weaver and some of these other guys were saying about the same. That's what I was kind of hearing from their accounts. And I'd have to agree. I think that, we have an interesting venue and, perhaps building on this run. I heard one guy from MRN after the Cup race was over said this was the best ever that they've seen the next gen car do at a road course, which is pretty eye-opening. I guess perhaps the connection to, the V8 supercars technology and the street courses, it's played off pretty well in that respect there too. So, kind of another way to look at things there at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I hated it for Tyler Reif. He deserved to get the win there. It was going to be really exciting if he could pull it off. It would have been cool to get a couple first-time winners this weekend. But again, it's sometimes, things get a little bit too tense, and that's just kind of the way it plays out there at the same time. So, a lot of drama in that race. You had a lot of the backup teams and teams that tore up equipment still get good finishes. Brendan Queen and Christian Eckes both came back from wrecks in practice and qualifying. So did Giovanni Ruggiero getting into the top 10 there as well. I was really happy, for seeing some of these teams up there too. Again, it was still a long afternoon for a lot of those other teams, and the race went way later than anybody thought it was going to. And we didn't get out there until pretty late that day as well. So, again, the write-up there on the Truck Series article is on the lastcar.info page, and you can check that out there too. Incredible footage that was posted just earlier today of the impact that Justin Marks had to the outside barrier there, and a photographer that had to take a couple steps back, showing some very heads-up maneuvering there to stay safe there in that situation there. But just shows how wild things can get out here. As to the movement of the walls themselves, I know that was a big topic of the weekend here as well, especially after the Saturday race, which I'll get into here next. At the same time, you really want a situation. I think you still want to have those barriers moved to a certain extent. You don't want it to have to be something where they're moving to such an extent they're like flying apart or anything, not like that. But I think you do still, if you're not going to have a safer barrier, why is a safer barrier that much better of a device? It's because it's able to deform, it's able to respond to, a car, moving in those situations. I think that if you have a concrete barrier that won't move, I think you have potentially a much more dangerous situation. We actually saw some pretty hard hits with Jersey barriers back at the Clash when it used to be in LA. And more recently, I'm actually not a big fan of the fact that there's Jersey barriers entering turn one at Sears Point, which has traditionally been a very fast corner. It's a little bit slower with the addition of the drag strip and the fact that that's separated off the course, unlike it used to be. But we've seen some hard hits there. Casey Kane had a very hard hit there. Further back in the first year that they ran it, Austin Cameron tore up a car there in that corner. It can be very hazardous there as well. And the big reason that those impacts have been so bad is that, the barriers don't move. Now, the alternative, of course, is in the past, you didn't have those barriers there, and then you had cars slide off into tire barriers, and then you had serious accidents like Richard Petty's in 91, or Steve Park and Ken Schrader in 99, or other drivers, in between. But yeah, I mean, I think some combination of barriers, that's something in between there, or maybe a different, not just having grass in the runoff area, something kind of, some kind of change would work better there. And I think that's the other part to look at it. However, I think that I sure hope that NASCAR is at least looking at Sam Mayer's car after the impact that he had on Saturday, because the onboard camera, even with the barrier moving, still showed just how much his body responded to it. I mean, the fact that his arms were thrown to the side right as the steering wheel is moving up, to the point that his arms are striking the wheel. I mean, racing is always going to be a dangerous sport. But when you see something like that, I think it's at least important to understand the physics of involved here and, what's an acceptable risk there. So there is a balance to be struck. I don't feel that the barriers themselves moving is a problem. But yeah, I mean, as to the severity of the impacts, yeah, they should be taking that very seriously. So I think it's a matter of trying to find a good, even spot in between on that. So mentioning the O'Reilly race here as well, of course, that accident was the biggest part of that one there, a massive wreck that happened in there. And again, this was a race that kind of more similar to the Cup Series race, was started off with more of issues of mechanical variety there as well. So kind of looking at the action that happened in the garage area, had the first few laps go by, and then suddenly, again, you had just a few cars that were really dropping off the pace. You had going through, looking through some of my other notes here, LeVar Scott was the first driver that went into the garage area. I was at the far end of pit road at that time, kind of watching the action coming out of turn 16. There was a pretty good view if you could get on pit road next to the mobility pit box, and you can see the cars coming out of the chicane. You can get a little glimpse of them there, and then them coming onto the front straightaway. That was a pretty cool view, because when they hit that hump there, you could see how much it upset the balance of the cars, and some would handle that better than others. And you also got a good, very pretty clear view, at least for a moment, before they kind of disappeared behind the wall, of who was in, what order, or, who was having issues, or who was coming to pit road, of course, that at the same time. So that was a pretty good spot, although it wasn't near a big screen, so it was a little different there. But that's where I was kind of at the start of that. And then when the 45 broke down, all of a sudden Alpha Prime's crew was rushing down pit road, and they were telling people to get out of the way and trying to get down there. And because, where the 45 stall was, I guess it must have been one of the last ones next to the mobility box. They had to push it all the way from the Cup garage all the way back downhill to the O'Reilly garage. And that took so much time there at the same time to get all that together. And, then of course I was following them down there. 45 car gets pushed in, or gets towed in rather, put on the jack stands. They're starting to work on it. While they're working on that, Ryan Ellis breaks down. The 02 car comes into the garage area. They get both of them getting worked on. But all of this secondary to, of course, bearing the lead here. Before any of this happens, of course, I didn't even think that was going to even be a story, because, you had the issue with Corey Day at the very beginning of the race, picking up the sewer grate on the front of the car, tearing out the radiator, tearing out the oil cooler and the oil pan. We laugh about it now, but I mean, just in a, it's lucky that it wasn't more serious than it was, that it was at least picked up. And, the limit is just to the mechanical damage to the car, but sprayed oil all over the track. And I was like, oh, well, this is crazy. It's the first lap of the race. The last place battle is going to be an easy one. it's going to be just something, he's definitely going to be out of the race. They have this rule now where you can't replace the radiator, you're done for the race. And then things changed. Now I know it's a prestigious race, and I know that they also tore up another car because in practice, much like the Truck Series, had a little bit of attrition there in the O'Reilly Series with both Brandon Jones and Corey Day tearing up cars. They get backup cars out there. Did have another issue with Hendrick Motorsports being a little hairy about taking pictures of their wrecked cars. You may remember back in our Las Vegas coverage a couple of years ago that had issues with taking pictures of Kyle Larson's car. This time I was trying to take a picture of the 17 after it had been parked over in the corner. They're like, oh, can't take a picture of the car with the hoods up. Now, I understand that on one extent. I don't really like taking pictures under the hood. I don't have any interest in that. But there were some other guys that were coming around there that were filming under the hood of the cars there, and I think they probably needed to be watched that much more if that was the rule. But, my understanding is if it's visible, if they're not covered up, it's fair game, and I'm not out here. But, at the same time, I understand that there's limitations to, what these teams can do. They're very protective of their technology. If the cost of that is not taking pictures under the hood, that's fine. I don't really have any interest in that. I can let some, I wouldn't even know what I'm looking at, honestly, in that, in that particular case. So, that's fine. I just want to show what's happening in the garage area. And whenever they take the wheels off the cars, I actually put like little graphics over those and blur that out. Because you see that, the teams do that themselves. I try to do that as well. That was a big issue in the Truck Series practice there at the same time. And it seems like the teams appreciate that too. So that's good. I have no problem meeting people halfway. My job there is just to try to report to you what's happening out there. It doesn't need to be, revealing, a mechanical secret to one of these teams or anything. But I just thought it was interesting that's still, it's just Hendrick. That's the only team that I've ever had problems with on that. Even 2311, when Bubba Wallace was involved in the same incident with Kyle Larson there that time in 22, I guess, was that year. Had zero problem with 2311. By the way, kudos to 2311. They actually had a hard card discount on their souvenirs at their hauler there. I picked up a Hardee's shirt, and they gave me a discount on that because I had my media pass with me. So I don't know any other teams that do that right now. So kudos to them on that. And yeah, if you're, that would be another one too. Yes, I'm going to be at Sears Point on Friday, Big Glenn. I see your comment there on that. Yes, that is the plan. We're going to get back home tomorrow. We're about 4 hours southeast of LASCAR headquarters here tonight. So we're going to hit the road tomorrow morning, and we should be back early afternoon and do that. I thought about doing the show tomorrow afternoon, but you know what? I've been chomping at the bit here to kind of get into it, and doing these hotel streams are kind of fun too. So I hope you don't mind a little bit of a later show here. I'm just amazed that we actually have some viewers here. I thought I was going to be just talking to myself for a couple hours here, but no worries there on that. The going back to Corey Day and the controversy, of course, that led this off. And again, the last place stories ended up being so much more complicated in all three of these races than I anticipated. But that's the fun part. You never know what you're going to get. So thought that Corey Day was going to be your last place finisher. They actually even opened a different entrance to the garage area to get him off of pit road, since he was up on the turn 16 side of it. Instead, he would have had to go down where LeVar Scott got towed in, or where Ryan Ellis was in. They end up opening another gate to the fan zone right next to where one of the food vendors was. And they just pushed his car diagonally right across the middle of the fan zone there, which is extraordinary. You would never see that at any other race. It's like if they did that at Sears Point, behind the big grandstands there on there. Maybe they used to do that, years ago, but now they got that pretty well cordoned off, these days. But it was crazy. They just kind of pushed him right there, and you got fans taking pictures and all their stuff. And they pushed the car right up to the hauler, get it on jack stands. They get another radiator out. They get the tires off. They get the oil pan out. They get all that together. And they were in the garage area for about half an hour. When Corey Day actually broke down, and they worked on it. Corey gets out of the car, he's standing by and watching the crew doing this. And of course the caution laps are going by. You got 5 caution laps go by. He's 5 laps down. Then the red flag comes out to fix the sewer grate. And so he's 5 laps down. So he's not going to be able to be a factor to win the race. And he's already in a backup car, and they've already had a long week there. And then they get the caution back out. I mean, it's about a half hour after, the actual crash happens. And again, after about a 19-minute red flag, during that half an hour, the car is lined up back at the end of pit road. Corey Day's behind the wheel, fires the engine, then stops and waits. Caution comes back out, drives back on the track. And then we got to wait for this entire period to get those 5 laps back. And, it's, I get the frustration, especially for people that were new to the sport, that, everybody's excited to see what's going to be happening out there. Now they got to wait through multiple caution laps for this guy to get his 5 laps back. Why didn't they just throw the red flag right when they had the sewer grate come out? If this was going to be the case, why didn't they just, adjust the transponder and say he's already 5 laps ahead or something? Why did this have to be necessary? I don't know. But, it seemed like it was a really inefficient way to do it. But it was kind of a mistake that it was even an issue to begin with. So it's hard to say. Josh Bilicki, I know, was very outspoken about it, talking about it afterwards. And yeah, I mean, talking with my brother here during the race afterwards, said that, the crowd was starting to kind of get restless during that. And I don't blame him. This was the same thing that we heard about Chicago last year, the Chicago Street Course, that you had a lot of people that came out to this event. They loved the colors, they loved the sound, they loved the pageantry of it, but they didn't understand why there were so many cautions. They didn't understand why these cautions go on forever. And it's ironic that on a week where NASCAR said, well, we're going to speed up our cautions, make sure they don't take so much time, that they end up having these absurd situations that happened here. Now, okay, yeah, maybe this is an extraordinary situation with the vent cover coming up and having to get a Navy welder out there to, get it soldered back in place, and then to check all the other ones so you don't have an issue for the Cup guys with their ground effects and their, more sensitive cars out there. It's that's definitely something where, the officiating is still not perfect. I mean, they've made massive gains this year. It's much more common sense than it's ever been, which is a big statement given, some of the absolute absurdity we saw the last couple of years. But this was definitely the most absurd thing I think we've had this year. Again, it seems like there would have been at least 2 or 3 other simpler solutions that would have accomplished the same thing and not wasted nearly as much time. We saw a bit of that in the truck race too, with things getting, some long cautions there. And then, of course, in the Cup Series race, we had the extended caution for Bubba Wallace's lost wheel that got stretched into the stage ending. Getting rid of the stage caution is probably the next logical step, but who knows, where that is on the menu, if at all. So we'll certainly see if that's the story there as well. So Corey Day gets his laps back, and last place battle keeps going. And then that's the point there that you started having the mechanical issues. LeVar Scott for Alpha Prime, Ryan Ellis for the Young's Motorsports team. And then right when I get over to Ryan Ellis's car, the 28 car is getting pushed behind me. And Kyle Sieg climbs out of the car. And Kyle's always been, probably one of the more brief drivers, I think, in interviews. I think that, I think whenever they have some kind of setback, he seems to take it particularly hard. And I don't mean to make it sound like everybody else is okay with not having good days out there, but you definitely have some drivers where it seems like, that it bothers them more often. And this was definitely the case with Kyle. Like, he came out of the car and I asked him what happened. And he said, "This is like driver error." And I was like, okay, well, whose error? Like, was you? Was it somebody else? And he's like, "You said driver error." And it was like, okay. And like, it was clear he wasn't going to be talking there, but he'd end up talking to another crew member. He gave him kind of the same answer. And then he said basically that he blew the engine. So that ended up being the reason that he was out. And it was a rough deal there because he had a cool paint scheme. He had a camouflage uniform, and their, that RSS team is still trying to get its, they've had a win with Eric Almirola, but trying to get a win with one of the Sieg brothers here. And of course, Ryan's career I've chronicled in that, the video on the channel here as well. Just another unfortunate setback, there at the same time there too. Again, you had very physical race from there. So again, mechanical issues there for both Ryan Ellis and LeVar Scott. Both of them get back out there and actually end up climbing past several other drivers, starting with Kyle Sieg. And really, after I talked with Kyle, then suddenly you had other drivers that were coming in there afterwards. Started seeing crew members from Sam Mayer's team come by, and starting to see crew members from Joe Gibbs Racing coming by, and wondering what was going on. And they look like they're not in a rush, but you can pretty much tell, okay, these are three teams that are definitely have torn up some equipment or blown an engine or something, and they're not in a rush to make any repairs there. Very different from, again, the Alpha Prime team and the mechanical issues they had. And sure enough, yeah, you had three cars that were savagely torn up in that accident in turn one between Sam Mayer, Anthony Alfredo, and the Williams Sawalich cars there as well, getting brought in there. And again, yeah, I mean, mentioning that earlier, the extent of the barriers and trying to, I mean, is there any other way to make an impact with those barriers any safer or any softer for these drivers? Who knows? Maybe that's something else that could get investigated. But, again, you have to still offset to make sure that it's still safe for, whoever or whatever is on the other side of that there too. Again, it's just an ugly deal. I think that Sam was a bit hard on himself for his response in that. I mean, again, a mistake in that sense, and a really simple one to make at a brand new track where everybody's testing the limits of it. Glances off that wall, and when that happens, we've seen it. We saw it happen with Shane Van Gisbergen, not in this race this past week, but in the second race at the Chicago Street Course. He had some contact from, I believe it was Chase Briscoe, and it kind of caused him just kind of wing just one of those walls just a little bit. And if that happens, that car just goes straight. Whatever direction it is, it's just going to go straight. You can't steer it, and the confines are such that you're just going to run into something real hard. And if that happens on a restart, which is what we had in this O'Reilly race, it's going to be absolutely brutal. And unfortunately, we saw that there. Fortunately, and again, I'm optimistic that that Mayer's okay. Other than just being sore from that, he ended up spotting the next day. So I'm going to take that as an indicator that he's all right after that accident there. That's the important thing. So that's something going forward. But this ended up being a race, wreck that changed much of the complexion of the event. You had the order shuffled very much. You had a lot of top contenders with serious damage out there. Austin Hill got some pretty good damage in that one and seemed, wasn't quite sure if he was going to be a factor in the finish there at first, but of course that certainly changed. And then you get Carson Kvapil. Looked like he's going to be able to pull off his first win. Again, how about that? We had first-time winners in the making of all three of these races at one phase or another. Carson, much like Tyler Reif in the Truck Series, I think is even closer to getting his first win. It seems like he certainly should have already. I think back at Phoenix was probably one this year that got away at the very least. Being up there and up getting routed out of the groove there and ends up dropping back a couple of spots, ends up being a fourth place finish there for him. The order changed significantly for there. But again, Austin Hill pulled off the win. Congratulations to Austin on that. I didn't follow what was happening with the victory lane as closely because I was really trying to get more post-race driver interviews from other drivers. But certainly an emotional victory there. Of course, the first win for Richard Childress Racing after the death of Kyle Busch last month. Again, having it be on Father's Day weekend, and having it be Austin Hill after he had also qualified his Cup car very well. Unfortunately, as we've already discussed, he had he made a mistake himself in the Cup Series race that caused the Van Gisbergen and Zilich wreck there in that particular race. But, pulling off that win, wearing the 8 hat, they actually sold out of the Kyle Busch hats at the hauler there by Sunday, there at the track there this weekend. So everybody was very much flying the colors for Kyle. I hope you guys enjoyed as well the picture on pit road that I brought some die-cast from home and put those in front of the 33 on race morning, and got that shot from pit road there as well. This is, of course, our first race covering in person this season. We had a little bit of a different schedule this year and definitely wanted to make our own contribution to that there as well. And again, for those of you who are longtime viewers of this channel, I am still working on a video on Kyle Busch's career, tribute to him, that will be coming up sometime in July. I'll be working on that again after the conclusion of our Sonoma coverage, Sears Point, this next week here as well. So stay tuned for that. But Austin Hill himself, one thing that really stood out to me is, I didn't see, Richard Childress, of course, very emotional there, understandably, in Victory Lane. And yes, very reminiscent of 2001, and hearing him give a very similar reaction when Kevin Harvick won at Atlanta in the 29 car there that same season. It was very reminiscent of that. But as for Austin himself, I was very struck by his maturity in the media center. He conveyed the way he kind of carried himself during his interview, and the way he was kind of answering questions. I've kind of viewed him, in the past here as somebody that, he's got kind of a bullish personality, but also, a little reckless, really, honestly, and sometimes makes really silly mistakes. And, and again, still did to an extent here with the Cup Series race here as well. But at least in terms of how he's carried himself and how he's handled what is undoubtedly pressure from, now being the full-time driver of Kyle's former team and taking on the challenge of running these races. He really felt in the Saturday interview after winning the O'Reilly race that he was going to be a factor to win Sunday's race as well. And he brought up correctly that he had been a top 10 finisher at the Chicago Street Course just last year, and had figured out that, had been kind of figuring out the 33 car and the next gen car quite well. And, we've seen a lot of drivers already in the O'Reilly series have a very difficult time making that transition. We hear so much of Connor Zilisch talking about how different these cars are from each other, and how you can't really, you got to kind of just set aside your entire approach to running one car versus the other. Very similar to what we heard from drivers back during the 550 package era. I remember Joe Nemechek saying that about running his Xfinity car at the time versus the 550 package in the Cup Series, that, you could keep your foot to the floor in those races versus if you tried that in a O'Reilly car, you'd drive the thing right through the wall. But Austin, with his great run at Chicago last year, really kind of, felt like he was kind of figuring these street courses out. And it's really surprising, given that you have to be so technically proficient, you have to have that level of perfection, because if you just off that little bit, just like he was on Sunday, that could be the difference between being a factor for the win and just being in the garage area. And that was definitely what happened there as well. But in his interview, again, I thought he handled himself very well. I like the way that he answered his questions, and he just conveyed strength, honestly, in a strange way. It's hard to articulate, but I think it speaks to how well he's handled being Kyle Busch's relief driver and going to these other venues and doing that. So as much as I'm sure he's frustrated by what happened on Sunday, I'm sure still very pleased by how things went on Saturday. And seeing how things go on both sides of that effort going forward. I just hope that again, if it's just a matter of figuring out how to exit a corner a little more cleanly and not causing a big pileup, if that's the biggest issue he has to struggle with, then I guess he's really getting pretty close to being that competitive as well. And maybe we'll have another one of these shows where we're going to be talking about him getting his first Cup win. But that will not be this week here at the same time. So that's another one to look at there at the same time. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jimmy. No, I definitely see. Yeah, I've seen the same issue there with Kyle on the cover of People magazine. Yeah, very reminiscent of what we saw with Earnhardt back in 2001, back when he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated and everything. Every news magazine. News magazines being more common back then, of course, than now. But it really speaks to how widespread that has been for people there. But yeah, again, a very, very interesting interview. in that. And if you haven't seen Austin Hill's interview from Saturday, I encourage you to actually check it out, because I thought it was, yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting. But yeah, so Austin Hill wins over Taylor Gray, Sheldon Creed, Carson Quapple, and Sammy Smith. Smith coming back from a couple of spins there that must have been undoubtedly frustrating for him to get in the top 5. I didn't mention Jesse Love and the lug nut violation that was pretty surprising too, that forced him to get a pass-through penalty. And what was interesting about that too, in the terms of last place battle, because the accident with Corey Day happened on the opening lap, and you actually had the caution come out immediately, and then of course the 5 laps under caution and the red flag. You actually had Jesse Love wasn't able to serve that penalty until about 10 laps into the race. So it'd be after the restart and then 1 lap after that, and then he finally came down pit road and served it and had to make up that ground. And then lucked out when you had, I believe it was the stage 1 caution that got him back on around. He didn't lose a lap. They actually didn't have anybody get a lucky dog until like the last 2 cautions of the race for how large the track was there. But that was definitely another part of that there too. I was glad to see Austin Green get an 8th place finish, and that was the first interview I wanted to actually get on pit road there, and I'm so glad I got a hold of him there after the race. He was actually talking with his father David, who was watching from pit road very intently at the pit stall, very reminiscent of what we saw at Sears Point a couple of years ago when he got that top 5 battling Sam Mayer to the finish there for, I believe, the 2nd and 3rd spot there in that particular race. That was really cool to see. And Austin gave a great interview. I really wanted to get more video interviews for you. Again, I do have the one with Riley Herbst, and I have more video from the finish of the race there as well. So I'll have those for you guys here. And I want to post these on this YouTube channel as well, instead of just on the Twitter account. So that's another thing I need to work on. I'll be catching up on that during the week here too. But I was very pleased with, I've really enjoyed the O'Reilly series, and I really realize this more and more every time we do one of these trackside coverages. I've grown up a Cup Series loyalist. I still have, partiality to the Cup Series and its history, but the culture is so different. It's so different these days, and the charter system has really screwed up a lot of that. Where, again, much like Riley Herbst's interview, I've expected to hear a driver that was excited about running well, and acknowledging that they've had some rough runs, but it was kind of like, it's like, our car is always good. Our team is always good, and we're always performing at this level. It's just sometimes we don't finish there. It's like, well, I guess that's a good way to look at it, but it's just different. It's kind of like what they did with Bristol. It's not like it's bad. It's just different. But in the O'Reilly series, you very much have the drivers that are, again, trying to work their way up there and make names for themselves and have good runs. And that's why I'm still very defensive about having Cup guys in there just as much as ever. It's why I hammer on it just about every one of these shows here. And I do still stand by that, recent events notwithstanding. But, I think in this O'Reilly race here in particular, I could have probably spent, time with maybe half the drivers in this field and got some really interesting stories. But I was glad to get the ones that I did get there as well. And Austin Green was the first of those there in the 87 car. And I really wanted to ask him about what it meant to him to have a good run where he was at the front of the field right after having Nick Sanchez get in his car last week at Pocono, and knowing that he's got this race in Sears Point, and then he's got pretty much a reduced schedule from there for the rest of this year, where he was promised a full-time deal in a team that had run multiple cars before. And I know he's not happy about that. And I'm glad I saved that to the end. And he gave a very interesting interview, and you can see that, yeah, obviously he's not happy about getting, losing some opportunities to perfect his oval racing skills. And of course, the Green brothers, his father and his uncles there, of course, it's not like they're strangers to that circuit either. The kid will figure it out. That's going to come with time, but it is disappointing that they didn't just expand to 2 cars to put Nick Sanchez in another one instead of costing Austin a shot at getting better at those tracks. I don't really agree with that decision there at the same time, but these things do happen. Another driver that I was very pleased to talk to was Dr. Patrick Staropoli, who in this particular race was right there in the top 10. And, again, a bit of a controversial, driver change, him getting brought in there after Parker Kligerman, had done so well in that car and being so close to victory there as well. But again, Dr. Patrick Starapoli, just wrote about a last place finish that he had, earlier this year. I believe at Watkins Glen, he had damage in a first lap accident at Talladega. A lot of struggles there. He was so friendly there on pit road, and I came over there to the car after they had stopped on pit road, and he was showing, I believe, a friend of his there about how the cool suit worked and all that, and he had just so much energy. And he said in his interview, he said he was ready to start that race all over again and do it differently, and from what he'd learned the first time. And yeah, I guess he's just one of those doctors that just has so much energy and does 7 or 8 different things in his life, and that's what he does. But he was running really well. He was in and out of the top 10 and there at least twice. And the CW broadcast did a good job of featuring his run there in the middle stages, and I was very excited to be able to speak to him there afterwards, and I really appreciate him being so excited there. And yeah, again, that was more or less what I was expecting, is somebody that recognized they were doing well, and in that moment. Maybe that doesn't always get felt, but I feel like it should. I mean, I feel these drivers are, as competitive as they are, they know where they're running, or they know when they're not running well. Yeah, I'd say that was easily a career run for him this year. Even though he had a flat tire at the end that ended up dropping him back, and he had to do a pit stop there. Right when I got to pit road, I saw him rolling off pit road there, and I was like, oh man, he's just going to lose all those spots. And he did, unfortunately, but again, the 20th place finish only tells part of the story there, and I was glad to get that part of it. And then, then in the garage area there, talked with a few other drivers, got Josh Bilicki, got Brad Perez, Dawson Cram. If you haven't seen these interviews, they are on the Twitter account. And as I said, I'll be posting them on the YouTube account there as well, here on this channel. Probably by the time you're watching this, if you're not watching it live, I'll be getting those up there for you guys there too. But I really appreciate everybody that I spoke to. I would like to talk to Preston Pardus. There are a couple other guys I want to talk to. Preston Pardus was one. I haven't done an interview with him yet, but I have talked with him before there, of course, in his family's history there. And Baltazar Leguizamon, in the Argentinian driver there in the 42 car. I was ready to speak with him. I was about to before opening ceremonies. I just kind of missed my window because they basically were about to do the national anthem right when I got to his car. And then he dropped out with an engine failure before the finish. So I didn't, he wasn't there by the time I got back to the garage after the race. And unfortunately, it looks like he's not entered this week in the O'Reilly race. They have Will Rogers driving the 42 in his place this week. So unless he picks up the Joey Gase car, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case or not. We'll see what happens there too. So hopefully we'll get a quote from him there. I was really hoping to speak with him because, again, I don't follow soccer very closely, but I could see he was wearing the Argentinian the Messi jersey there as well. But that was pretty cool. So, he had that, and then he got ready to get hopped in the car and went from there too. Had kind of an interesting deal there with some of his sponsors that weren't on the car either. He had some quarter panel sponsors that were missing between practice and the race, so I don't know what the story entirely was there too. The other story from this race for these teams, especially the O'Reilly series here going into next week, to an extent the Cup series, but even more for O'Reilly. A lot of these teams were trying to kind of keep their cars in one piece and not have to make a lot of repairs to them because they're going to run them at Sears Point. And so a lot of these drivers were actually running very conservatively in this race. Chief among these, I would say, would be the Joey Gase effort. Much like we've seen, they do this at the super speedways sometimes too, just to kind of, stay out of trouble and then try to advance at the end to get the best run that they can. What'll happen is they'll drop to the back of the field with everybody else, the pre-race inspection issue drivers, and then they'll kind of work their way back up there. And they did do that in this race. Even with Jesse Love and all the other, backup cars and mechanical issues the other drivers had, they were like the last 3 cars in the field there at the very beginning of the race, and kind of stayed back there. But they did work their way back up into traffic there. You got Dawson Cram finished in the 21st spot, Brad Perez in the 19th position. Joey Gase a little bit further back in 23rd, but again, ahead of, all the drivers that fell out of the race and some of the other drivers on the lead lap. So good effort for them there as well. Both Cram and Perez were saying that they were going to be given a bit more latitude to run a bit more aggressively next week. So we'll see if that's going to be the case for those two drivers there, and that's going to be something to watch. Excuse me, I'm going to get a little bit of water here, and then we'll get the rest of the discussion here in just a little bit here too. So hang on here, folks. Ah, sorry about that, folks. Splashed some water in my face there. But yeah, so I'm glad to hear that some of these drivers that, again, had some good runs, able to survive the San Diego race. Brad Perez's car, again, literally did not have a scratch on it. I showed that in the video there too, and you could see what was happening there with him. So, and he's got a deal with Dusty Baker to run the Baker Racing Wines sponsor there on the 55 car. So that's going to be an interesting promotion there. He was very excited about that. So we got the news about that today. And then as for Dawson Cram, I think it's doubly exciting because Mike Harmon's team usually doesn't come out to the West Coast, but obviously could not pass up the opportunity to run at San Diego on the naval base there, of course, with all the political and patriotic initiatives that the Mike Harmon team in particular has been involved in there. Done a lot of veteran initiatives. The Save 22 Foundation has been one of those that has backed the Harmon team. It was great to see them be able to have an opportunity to compete in the race, and even with a short field, as much as I'm not crazy about short fields out there, at least it allowed that everybody that showed up on base was going to be in any one of those races. So I'm glad that kind of worked out for them. I think any DNQ in that would have been particularly bitter to swallow. Although, again, who knows what's going to happen next year if the race does return in that respect there. But yeah, we're going to have Mike Harmon's team out there, again, affiliated with Joey Gase's team this year, and we'll see what Dawson can do with that program there as well at Sears Point. But yeah, again, the O'Reilly series again continues to be a really interesting series. Brent Cruz was the odds-on favorite, kind of like Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen was for Sunday there, but unfortunately an engine failure for the 19, very similar to what he had in the 20 car on Sunday, ended up ending his race, and he ends up back in the 31st spot there with the blown engine on the Mobil 1 car. But again, Cruz is he doesn't need to have all these other drivers like, a Van Gisbergen or Zilich not in the field to be a competitor for winning these races. He went toe-to-toe with Corey Heim at the Charlotte Roval last year. That's still, I bring it up a lot on this show, but that's still one of the most impressive runs I've seen out of Brent in his early career here. And I think, he's carried that into the O'Reilly series. He's had some surprising runs this year. He'll get there. It's just a matter of when. I'm sure he wanted to have it in this one with the prestige of this event that the way it was, but it just wasn't to be in that respect there too. So again, yeah, I think it was an interesting race there as well. I hate that Jesse Iwuji struggled out there. He mentioning the fact that he got promoted in the United States Navy, him being a member of the Navy Reserve out there. Congratulations to him on his promotion. They did a deal with that there during the pre-race to the O'Reilly race. And again, they very much made such ceremonies really a part of the weekend. On Sunday, leading into the Cup race, they had the oath of allegiance for the both new recruits and activated members of the United States Navy presented there, and they had everybody participate in that ceremony there as well, to witness it and celebrate them taking the oath there, and that was exciting to see. Very reminiscent of you know. Well, I mean, really, just it kind of reminded me when they had the story with Daniel Suarez taking the becoming a United States citizen. It's a privilege to witness ceremonies like that and see that take place. And again, it was everything was very accessible. It didn't feel entirely like a Navy program, and it didn't feel entirely like a NASCAR thing. It was kind of a little bit of both, and I don't know. I think that's probably the thing I'm most surprised about it. I don't know exactly how they synergize those so perfectly. I mean, obviously, you got, I mean, it's there's definitely an element of excitement and danger, and I guess you could look at it in a surface level there, and I'm sure there's undoubtedly a lot of members of the armed services that are NASCAR fans as well, or NASCAR fans themselves that are that have served in the past or are serving now, but it really just went really well together, and having that balance. There's things that need to be worked on, undoubtedly, and again, I can contribute some notes of my own here as well. We just got a survey, just an email, just this afternoon, but I think that overall, went quite well there too. So again, we had a lot of drama out there. A lot of, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I see you mentioned there, Jimmy. Yeah, all three of the broadcasters picked Brent Cruz to win. I thought that was a little unimaginative. Although I did notice one also mentioned Sam Mayer. They didn't have to be their pick, but they at least mentioned him there too. He's another guy that, yeah, is really good. Really good at these road courses there. Again, unfortunately, just had an awful day there with that one miscue, and unfortunately had a pretty big mess from that. But again, we saw something very similar on Sunday, and it's still a new track, and everything else there too. So looking through here, Jeremy Clements now has the record for the most starts in O'Reilly Series history. Broke the tie that he set with Kenny Wallace last week at Pocono, so he's now on track there. Harrison Burton got a top 10, which was good to see. He got a lot of media attention. I didn't even need to go over there to interview him because a lot of people were talking with him, and his struggles in the 24 car this year for Sam Hunt's team have already been a pretty big story already, so I guess that's not as much of an issue. Parker Retzlaff, I'm glad to see him get in the top 10. I would have loved to see Anthony Alfredo up there. I loved seeing both the Viking cars in the top 5 in qualifying. And it looked like, maybe one of them could really pull the upset if they could deal with Cruz or Hill and these other guys up there. Unfortunately, just wasn't meant to be. But Retzlaff up there, still getting the 7th place finish. And again, Alfredo was right up there when he got involved in the accident there and back in the 35th spot there. And again, it's so reminiscent to me for Alfredo of just the heartbreak he had at Sears Point a couple of years ago. I believe he had a brake failure in that first corner and hit those Jersey barriers there. Had to go to a backup car when he was driving for BJ McLeod, and then just doing the best he could under those circumstances. I don't know what they're going to piece together for him in the 96, but undoubtedly, I think that team, again, has continued to rally really well this year. Retzlaff has had to come back from his share of adversity when he gets in some early wrecks before, like we saw at, I believe, Kansas earlier this year. So we'll see him, turn the corner there as well. And I think that'll be another one to look at. Brandon Jones in his backup car came back to finish in the 12th spot, so a fine effort for him. Mentioning Jesse Love coming back from last place to the 6th spot there in the after the pass-through penalty there. Incurred in the race. And let's see. I loved seeing the JR Motorsports throwback on Raja Caruth's car. That looked really cool. I noticed somebody pointed out they added the yellow side skirts to it to kind of finish off the look. Unfortunately, Raja gets kind of a rough run there in the 22nd spot. But I will say also that his star is on the rise here too. I know that they mentioned over at his souvenir hauler, they sold out of the blue hats with the orange Lightning McQueen font on there. So he was doing quite well on that. And there's a lot, I know he had a lot of fans in the stands there as well. He had a very good looking uniform that went with that too. LeVar Scott did too, with the Sunoco uniform, with the 94 94 octane branding still on it there too. So let's see, kind of back into this. We're not going to do the trivia program tonight. It's already kind of a late evening show here. We'll bring back our trivia portion there for our Sears Point show, which will be our Camp LASCAR episode at the KOA next Sunday. So we'll look ahead to that here at the same time. But yeah, let me. I'm going to kind of wrap up here in a little bit. I just want to see other notes I had from this weekend and kind of check out, kind of looking through some pictures from this weekend. Also, those of you in the Patreon, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, thank you for your support as well. We had a couple new members join the door magnet this weekend and added your names onto that list there as well. We'll do the drawings for both this magnet as well as the Sears Point one. We're going to have a different one next week. Those will be given away later on there, probably early July there after, again, the Sears Point weekend, and do that. I also grabbed some more hero cards as well, so we'll have some runner-up finishers there as well too, and get that all together for you guys. Let's see here. Looking at the paint schemes. Yeah, they have the wet weather tires out there. Kind of clicking through some of my other pictures here. I love the please drink responsibly sticker that was added over to the 35 car. And kudos to Dawson for bringing up that kind of the story behind that there as well. Yeah, there's just certain rules they have with certain sponsors that they get presented out there, at least under NASCAR. Really liked Austin Green's paint scheme with the battleships on it there, and it looked even better with the tire marks all over it, so it definitely had its share of war wounds there on it. Austin Varco made his Truck Series debut this weekend in the 22. I got the good fortune to speak with his family there on pit road. They were very excited. Actually lived out in the San Diego area, so very reminiscent of course, Jimmy Johnson being from El Cajon, just down the road there. You had other San Diego competitors that were competing that weekend. In fact, the paint scheme that was on the number 20 car, that was your last place finisher with Christopher Bell and Brent Cruz driving, was actually designed by three patients, from a local children's hospital in San Diego. So a lot of the surrounding community was very much involved in promoting the racing this weekend. One driver I would have loved to talk to was Brendan Gaughan, who had a great rally in that race. He had absolutely destroyed his truck in practice, but they didn't go to a backup and perhaps didn't have one because the 91 got a backup already at the McAnally team. So they were hammering out the fender, getting that truck back together. They had to weld underneath to get the splitter reattached and everything else. They were way off the pace at the beginning. He was so far behind. About to get lapped in the opening laps of that race there, and managed to catch back up, survived a lot of the chaos, and got in the top 20. Only the driver with such tremendous Truck Series experience, past multiple-time winner, and almost champion as well, could pull off such a feat there. And sounds like this is now about the end of his career, at least as an active driver out there. But wonderful, wonderful way to go out. I know a lot of people got his interview there, so I'm glad that got covered there too. But it was pretty cool to see, and very surprising to see him back up in the mix there at the same time. Looking at other ones from this weekend. A lot of great paint schemes here at the same time. Glad to see the Henderson team come back out and run this race. First time we've seen them since Daytona. Again, not as much of a factor there with Kligerman this time around here, but again, not torn up though at the same time like a lot of these other teams were. Again, just a massive amount of attrition there from other teams throughout the field here. As kind of look through some of what we had here at the same time. Let's see. Kind of going through there. Kind of want to remind myself on this. That was mostly from Friday. Kind of looking at the pictures there. I love the old. Oh, we had That's right. We had Drew Brees at the race over the weekend. That was crazy. Patrick Mahomes apparently was at the race too. I didn't see him. And then they had like some, gosh, they had some radio co-hosts throughout there. I saw them over the Sam Mayer team, getting talked to about tire pressures and tire analysts and what they do. But I wasn't quite familiar with them. Didn't have as many celebrity sightings there. I did see Pete Hegseth at the starter stand there. I didn't see him at the drivers meeting. I didn't. We went by the drivers meeting actually before it was starting. They had a party there in one of these big hangars, and Mike Helton was there, and I'm sure Ben Kennedy was there and some other guys. But I felt like kind of out of place when I first went by there. But kind of had an interesting section there. But yeah, I was there for the media availability with Drew Brees, and he actually gave kind of a cool interview on that and talking about local sports. Interesting to have San Diego able to bring him in for this one here after, of course, going from the Chargers to the Saints famously in his career there as well. But yeah, he was really personable there, and that was cool to hear as well. Let's see, where am I here? Also, big thanks to everybody who stopped by that I ran into there during the weekend. Oh, I got you, man. You all right? Whoop. You got it, man? Ran into so many people that, again, both between the Sunday tweet up there with Bob Pockris and as well as other people just running into there at the track. Many people out there. Thank you so much, everyone, to stop by. It was great to be able to talk about last place finishers and the other history of the sport and the videos and everything like that. It's wonderful to hear from people out there. If I missed you when you were at the track, I apologize. I will be at Sears Point there next week. Just stay tuned on my Twitter feed there. That's where I usually try to give updates there about where I'm available there during the weekend. I always try to go to at least some kind of appearance there during the weekend. So if people want to, meet up or anything like that, and if you want to copy your book signed or anything like that, of course, I'm happy to do that too. No problem there. As well, but it ran into so many people. Even Jordan Bianchi in the media center said he was a big fan of the videos there on the channel, and I really appreciate that as well. And it was just really cool, and it was great to be at the event and be able to share that with everybody. And also sharing it with members of the military too. I ran into a couple of people there. There was one that was an active member that was there with his father. What they did was they actually paired each of the Cup Series cars with a particular military division. And they had these different drivers like paired up with them. And this particular person was part of like a helicopter division that was assigned to the Ty Gibbs team. And I was like, wow, you got a good pick, because actually Ty's got a lot of good runs. And he was just kind of saying just how much he was enjoying the race weekend there. This is his first race he'd been to. He was just kind of figuring out where everything was and all that, and what the sport was about. And we were just kind of hanging out, and that was about the same time during the O'Reilly race that a lot of the different cars were getting towed in during the wreck. And I was like, dude, yeah, go. You can check out with his team, and I hope he got back with some sheet metal off of one of the cars there, because I know at least off the 41 there was a lot that they were cutting off there too. But and every service member that I ran into on that was just like that. Everybody was so welcoming. They were so friendly. They were so excited to be there. You could go to the McDonald's that was on the base, and they'd be still keeping that open late at night. And you got people in there that are talking about the race. You got race fans. And again, race fans, military people, everybody mingling. Nobody's staying in like one corner or another. Everybody was just kind of all, in the same deal, just having the same conversations and all that. And again, maybe this shouldn't surprise me as much as it is. I mean, again, everybody, in the military was a civilian at some point, and then took on this responsibility, and again, it's good to see that relationship. It's good to see that was that was the case, and both sides were equally excited for each other in that. And I think that was good to see there at the same time. So yeah, and again, big thanks to everybody that spoke to there during the weekend, and that was definitely something that I'll definitely remember for sure on that. But yeah, I mean, my goodness, just what a demanding racetrack, and what a just a crazy. Oh, sorry, had a sound on a clip there that I was going through there. I have some race footage there from the O'Reilly race there as well on that. But yeah, just again a little bit of everything, I think, in all three of these races, as you could probably surmise from all of that. But let's see here. I'm just kind of looking at some of these other pictures from the weekend. Yeah, this is more like the mechanical issues from some of the O'Reilly cars. Posted those as well. Yeah, closing stages of that race, the interviews, and then yeah, through Sunday there as well. Yeah, I mean, my goodness. Oh, and I didn't even. Yeah, the Medal of Honor recipients. That was really cool. When on Sunday, when we got to the racetrack, we got there early, and we were setting up, and I heard they were doing this media availability there, and they had these a couple of gentlemen that were there, and you had one that was a both of them in the Navy, one a Navy airman, and another one that is a Navy SEAL. The airman had served in Korea and was describing very excitedly about, like, the turning radius of his plane versus like a MiG, and all that, and it was wonderful. And he was, I think they said he was like 100 years old, or something like that. And like, my goodness, he was just so excited and sharing his story. And of course, his family was there, and they were hanging out at the track there. And again, I want to make sure I get their names here as well, pulling them up here. It was Elmer Royce Williams was the Korean war veteran there, and sharing his stories. And then we also had Brett Sablinski, who was a Navy SEAL from the late 80s to the early 2010s as well. And it was very interesting, again, from one person to the next. Everybody's experience is different. From Mr. Slabinski was, again, very kind of asking him questions about it. He would just kind of, give very short, very simple answers to your questions on that, about when his service was and all that, and wouldn't offer a lot of details there as well. But, seeing them there and having them be part of the ceremonies, and he just hearing their stories, however much of them they wanted to share, that was really cool too. I mean, again, it's the kind of thing you see at, like, I don't even know where, like, at like the Olympics or something, or at, something in Washington or something like that. That was really cool. So, it had a little, it had just a little bit of everything there, among the action there this weekend. But, basically, kind of tie everything together here, I'll be very interested to see what these races look like on TV. I was listening to a little bit of the Fox Sports 1 broadcast of the Truck Series race. And, one thing I thought that was kind of interesting from that is, at the track, the way they had this set up, you can actually hear the broadcast crews, like, preparing for the broadcast. And for the Truck Series broadcast from FS1, which of course I've been, very critical of here on this show, they were basically just checking just to see if their volume was good enough. Like, they were just kind of checking, like, like they're doing their mic checks, and, they're checking with Pit Road, they're checking this and they're checking that. But they're not, like, doing a run through of, like, what they're actually going to say, and so, I mean, you listen to some of these old ESPN broadcasts, and what they'll do is they have, like, these segments they're going to do, and they do a couple run throughs of them, and they're trying to make sure, they're bringing up, like, where they are, or what the history of the teams are, or something like that. There was just none of that there on this one. And so when the broadcast starts, they're just like, it's like, oh, it's San Diego. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful buildings. And, oh, there's a ship, and there's people here. And it's like when you hear somebody did a book report on a book they didn't read. It's like, it just came off that way. And it was so unfortunate, because again, much like with the reconfiguration of Atlanta or any of these new venues that are on the circuit, these are supposed to be a big deal. Like it used to be, people get critical of make a big deal out of a race that maybe we've run for many years or maybe isn't as popular or something like that. But now we've gone to this other point where you have these new venues and it's almost like this very casual kind of ho hum thing. It's like look up, they're showing a picture of a building. Look up what the building is and what its history is and what it's called or something. Not just like, ooh, look at that. It's like, it's just what the heck is going on. And I was relieved to see that it seemed like in the CW and Prime, they were doing a bit more of that. So that's good. At least having a bit from what I've seen of the broadcast there. And I also thought I really enjoyed the camera angles that they were using that looked very reminiscent of like a supercars race there as well. There was definitely an uptick in those two broadcasts, certainly between the CW and especially Prime, from what I saw. I saw the middle stages pretty much of all three races in that, but not the entire broadcast from those. But that was interesting. It was interesting to kind of get the behind the scenes element there. And, I don't know how much was happening, beforehand or how much they had prepared to talk about this race, but again, it deserves to have that much attention given to it. And I certainly tried to follow my own example with that, on my end here and kind of learn more about, the facility and its significance and everything. And, again, it made for that much more of, just a tremendous experience there as well. So, again, another great season for Prime. I see your comment on that, Andrew. I definitely agree. A great effort that they had here as well. It's another one to that'll be another deal there as well. But let's see, just looking at other comments here at the same time. There we go. Thank you guys. I appreciate you checking out here. But yes, we will both be doing the race at Sears Point this next week here, and that'll be the next part of this. So it's going to be really interesting to build off this. I'm still working on the articles there again for the both the Truck Series or the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Series there from the race this past weekend. So I'll be getting that together for you and checking that out here at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I know that I still feel like I'm only scratching the surface of it. I think to kind of put a to kind of wrap up here for this evening. Again, it was such a wonderful venue to go to. I really appreciated the open and unconditional patriotism that was in the air for sure. The respect that was shown both by the fans to the military members and the military's excitement and exuberance for NASCAR. I think that was great. I think it was fun to see everybody be able to just, celebrate and just, have a good time and drink some beer and watch some cars go fast and just be enamored by each side being enamored by something, whether it's, again, civilians looking at an aircraft carrier or the military members looking at these cars and trying to figure out how it's working. And, NASCAR fans have always been very open to, sharing their sport with others and trying to, the trick is sometimes trying to get people to listen sometimes, if they can get past the thing about, oh, it's just cars going in circles or something like that. But that was definitely not, the atmosphere here. This was a very, there's been discussion about if this was a crown jewel race. I don't know if I necessarily would go that far or if it needs to even have that label, but undoubtedly, I think it was a very successful venture. I think that if it ends up being the only time we ever do it, for whatever reason, I think it's done more than enough to become a really memorable race, and thankfully for good reasons. I mean, yes, there were hiccups along the way. Yes, there was the mayor wreck, there was the sewer grate, there were issues logistically about getting fans around the track or accommodations. But I'll tell you this also, during that entire weekend, there were efforts being made to still perfect the weekend. That nobody was sitting on their hands during all 3 days. If something was a problem on Friday, they were working on Saturday to fix it as well. They brought more food vendors in. They brought more shuttles in. They made things more accessible. They we're working on it. And I'm sure there's a whole list of things that if they do ever run this again, that they're going to be working on to make it even better than they did before. I'm sure that was the same thing at Chicago, at the street course there. I'm sure it's the same at the LA Coliseum or anything else they've done in the past. But this was something that I think was it was really enjoyable. It was really cool, and it was I would have loved to experience more of the other aspects of the track. I think it would have taken a whole week to do that, honestly, to even get a decent view of like all the parts of the track there at the same time. It was really cool, but it was. I hope you enjoyed the last place coverage from there. I certainly enjoyed it, providing it. It was a really unique garage arrangement for all three series. We had some really good storylines there from the drivers in the field. We had some really interesting winners, and really had the whole panoply of it. You had the heartbreak of the Tyler Reif deal there and Lane Riggs pulling off the win. You had the emotions of the Austin Hill and bringing Richard Childress back to victory lane, and then the unbelievable upset of a first-time winner who himself has been one of the most promising prospects in the sport, stamping another level to his building legacy already. That Heim time now means even more in the context of his career here at this point too. So yeah. Just tremendous. I'm just blown away. I'm sure going to have more thoughts about this race here too. Again, I thought about doing a stream here another time or anything like that, but I do want to kind of get my raw thoughts out here at the same time. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to hold off on doing the trivia things. It's pretty late here, and I've already asked enough of your time here listening to this tonight. But if you are listening to this, the next day or so, I hope you enjoyed it here as well. And this is not the end of our coverage for this week. We're going to go to the Sonoma Raceway next week at Sears Point, and we're going to talk about the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series as well. So in the meantime, now that, of course, we're well past technical inspection at the San Diego road course at Naval Base Coronado, I again want to say the website is lastcar.info. Patreon is patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. And the Twitter account is at LastCarOnBrock. Our next show is going to be next Sunday, hopefully. It will be after the Cup Series race at Sears Point. We'll talk about the O'Reilly Series and the Cup Series, maybe go into the ARCA West a little bit there as well. And that will also be trackside coverage that week. And it'll also be in another location here as well. So, again, thank you so much to NASCAR, to the United States Navy, to everybody that was involved in making this event happen, and for allowing me to be a small part of that experience. And I hope you guys enjoyed what I brought home here for you guys as well, and look forward to more coming to you guys in the next few days. So stay tuned for that as well. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Have a good night, and I will see you all next time.